recorded. Please do not ask to speak. You may enter any questions on the Q&A, which we'll review shortly. If you need technical support during this meeting, please call 202-997-8354. Okay, so using WebEx, audio and video. For audio and muting, everyone is on mute. You cannot unmute yourself. We can unmute you during the Q&A and comment period. This helps ensure that the meeting runs smoothly and that there are no disruptions during the presentation. To request to speak, you will need to use the raised feature, which you can find next to the emoji. Closed captions. WebEx has automatic system generated closed captions available during the meeting. Click the CC icon in the lower left corner of the window to turn on the closed caption. There are additional settings, so you may adjust the appearance of the captions if needed. Using the WebEx mobile application, click the three dots icon, scroll down and select closed caption option. Make sure the toggle switch is blue. For video, your video camera is off by default and you will not be able to share video. Using raised hand. If you have a question or comment that you would like to speak up about, please raise your hand. This indicates to the project team that you would like to speak. To verbally raise your hand, click the raised hand icon on the bottom center of the WebEx window. Alternatively, you may press the Control-Shift+R key on your keyboard and raise your hand. If you join via browser or mobile app, click the three dots icon and select raised hand. If you dialed by phone, dial *3 to use the raised hand function. Using WebEx Q&A, which is the only tool that we'll have available today. If you have any questions, concerns, please plug them into the Q&A. If you have questions during the presentation, send them via the Q&A feature. To send questions, click the three dot icon in the bottom right side of the WebEx window and select Q&A. A new panel or window will appear in the Ask field. Select all panelists. Click the text box to type your question and press the Enter key to send it. If you join via browser or mobile app, click the Q&A or question mark icon to access the Q&A to ask a question. If you dial by phone, dial *3 to use the raised hand function. This indicates to the project team that you would like to speak and ask a question. And I'll kick it off back to Christine for the agenda review.
All right, thank you, Syra. So this is our agenda for tonight. We're gonna have some introductory remarks by Councilmember Parker. We'll go through background, where we are now, a summary of what you told us, our findings from the road diet feasibility study, our spot treatment focus areas, where we're going to focus the majority of our work for the rest of the project, next steps, and then we'll go into Q&A. So without further ado, I'll kick it over to Councilmember Parker if you'd like to speak.
Thank you. And I hope you can hear me and or see me. But it is great to be with neighbors tonight. I want to first thank DDOT for following through on a commitment that they made, which was to come back and update the community on the results of their feasibility study of the corridor. As you may remember, I secured in the fiscal year 24 budget funding to improve safety along South Dakota. Since that time, we've had robust engagement alongside DDOT with community members, and you'll hear more about what we've learned and the results of DDOT's study. I know at times these conversations can be heated, and I know at times people can feel entrenched on their sides, but I hope we can leave with the vision and goal of improving safety along one of the most dangerous stretches of roadways in the district, which is South Dakota Avenue. And I'm still very much committed to that vision. Not to get ahead of things, but since it's public, I do just want to name that ultimately the decision was to do some spot treatments along the corridor in the short term. I know for some that may be welcome news, and for others, it may be a sense of disappointment. But I hope we can all collectively come together to work alongside DDOT to identify the sections along this roadway that need improvement, and to appreciate the work that will be ongoing in future years to continue these efforts. So I will stop there. I want to specifically thank Director Kirschbaum. I can't tell you how many hours we've spent in meetings and on phone calls about this specific project. There are many roadways throughout the district, many communities, and I have personally felt her commitment to Ward 5, and I want to just acknowledge that. Last thing, in terms of next steps for my team, we are still here to hear your concerns. We will vote on the fiscal year 26 budget on Monday. We continue to advance traffic safety efforts as well as other ways to improve safety along our corridors. And I just want neighbors to know that I remain committed to doing everything I can to ensure South Dakota is a safer, a more cohesive roadway for all of us. I'll stop there, turn it back over to DDOT, but looking forward to all that they're going to share tonight. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Councilmember. So as the council member said, we started this project, and I'll go through that. We started this project thinking that we could do a full study end to end from Riggs to Bladensburg, study the 3 miles, look at options for a road diet, configuration options, as well as safety improvements at intersections. We could potentially use the funding that we had left over to design a portion of the road diet, and then seek further funds from grant sources or others in future fiscal years. Most of you all hopefully have been paying attention. About $1 billion was removed from DC's own budget in FY25 with the signing of the federal budget. The remaining DC budget and DDOT budget has been adjusted to bridge those gaps and seek to deliver and focus on essential services. South Dakota project, no additional budget is set to be added in the FY26 budget. So remaining budget that we're looking at for the rest of this project is to finish our feasibility study for what it looks like if we remove a travel lane, and what traffic looks like there. Focus on spot treatments for intersections and blocks with major challenges and safety concerns, and then construct those highest priority items. So our full project budget to start, and including the additional $300,000 that we received from Councilmember Parker in FY25, was about $1.3 million. Typically, a study of this magnitude would be about that much just for the study alone. The projected amount that we have after the data collection, spot selection, and concepts that will result at the end of this project is about $600,000 that we're projecting to be able to build some of these spot safety improvements. For a full road diet build out, in looking at additional traffic analysis that may need to be done in future, road diet configuration changes, including any new signals that are recommended, could be about $6.5 to $7 million total to finish out a project in future. So just to give people a perspective of what that would take versus what we have. For our spot treatments, we can focus on constructing our highest priority items with the remainder of these funds. New traffic signals costs between $250,000 to $500,000, depending on the location and electrical connections and all of that. Marking, signs, and side street safety treatments, things that are more signing and marking, and signal timing changes can be about $10,000 to $50,000 per intersection. Concrete improvements can start at about $50,000 or so for a curb extension or median island, and then go up from there. So just to give people kind of a range and an idea of what these things tend to cost. Our budget, unfortunately, cannot cover all the intersections that we're going to talk about later on in the presentation. So we will need to select those highest priorities that we see and that you all tell us, focus on those and get those designed and built. So I'm going to go over what we heard from you all in the last year. We've gotten over 2,000 at this point. I think we're probably about 25 or 2,600 comments total. So it's clear that people care about their neighborhood, and you all care about the future of South Dakota Avenue. We got nearly 850 comments on our interactive map, about 1,400 on our feedback form, actually, nearly 75 additional letters as well. So all of that together, what we heard from you all, that there is strong demand for traffic calming and improved safety on the corridor. Speeding was a major concern that we heard repeatedly. High crash intersections and unsignalized turns were key concerns. Pedestrian and cyclist accessibility, the need for improved sidewalks, crosswalks, and predictability at intersections. Concerns over driver awareness for pedestrians crossing, and then suggested solutions of better visibility, signals, and there were recommendations for protected bike lanes from the community. People had a vision for a multimodal corridor. There's a desire for more accessible, sustainable, greener corridor for pedestrians, cyclists, and transit users. Many saw South Dakota as a healthier urban place in the future, or could be, supporting a diverse set of travel modes. There were diverging views on bike lanes. There were support from some and opposition from others. And people who were opposed were concerned about traffic congestion and impacts on commuters. Overall sentiment was a support for safer, more connected, community-friendly South Dakota Avenue. On the feedback form, that 1,400 submissions, 87% from the questions that we asked you were not happy with how South Dakota Avenue functions now. Most people, about 95%, agreed with the project goals and even added some further, including bus priority, further bike safety, better maintenance, and more green space for the corridor. Our top 3 ranked concerns from that feedback form were the ability to walk on the sidewalk and cross the street, safer crossings, speeding, and then the amount of crashes on South Dakota. Here's some quotes from what you all told us was your vision for South Dakota Avenue, like a neighborhood street, not a highway, safe, calm, and green, the same as it's been for 70 years, like a multimodal oasis, protected bike lanes, priority bus service, lower automobile speeds, a place where people can enjoy walking to get where they need to go, and so on. Ward 5 is full of children. I want South Dakota to be prepared in the future, similar but slower traffic. From our interactive map, these were the top rated intersections that you all told us you had concerns about. Galloway Street was number 1. Then a lot of that was pedestrian and turning concerns. Riggs Road was number 2. 20th Otis was number 3 with 65 comments. Monroe, and then 26th Myrtle was our 5th. So those are our top 5, and here are our top 14 or so, and then there was a gap between 14 and 15. So we'll be focused on a number of these through our spot treatments. What you all told us in these concerns on the interactive map, a lot of them were specific to that location. So that's this category here, about 34% of that. 15% of them were pedestrian or walking concerns, crossing the street. About 10% were general comments about support for a road diet. 9% were other projects or other kind of areas, so scooters, more green space and trees, increased enforcement, things like that. 7% was about speeding. Then we went through signals. Some were outside of the scope or the project area to note their concerns. Cycling concerns, opposition to a road diet, and then about 2% were sidewalk concerns. Some quotes from what you told us on the map, noting that sidewalks can be narrow and difficult to navigate with people biking on the sidewalk. Michigan and South Dakota was noted as a difficult intersection, a frightening intersection to cross. Same for Vista Street in South Dakota, that the street is lined with homes and it's a family street. South Dakota 20th was also noted as frightening to cross. And then road conditions, because the heavy trucks are shaking houses along the corridor. From the letters that we got, about half of them were, I'm not sure why this is not showing up, were supportive of the project and safety improvements. About 44% were opposed, and then about 4% were just questions about the project. So we'll use all of this information, especially the details that you all have already submitted, pairing that with crash data, turning movement data, and everything that we collected from the springtime when we were able to get our data collection completed. To determine spot locations, we'll select countermeasures to address those issues with you all, analyze those safety treatments, and then determine future efforts along the corridor. So with that, we'll get into the road diet feasibility results. So a refresher, what is a road diet? Road diets are reconfigurations of a roadway, typically 4-lane roadways, narrowing down to 3 or 2 lanes, and the extra space is repurposed for other means. It can also be a 6-lane to 5 or 4-lane as well. We see those very often across the region. The average total crash reduction for a road diet project is typically anywhere from 20% to 50% for all modes. We manage the street space, and we're able to do that for all day traffic volume and not just designed for peak hours, which can lead to speeding in the off-peak times. We reduce the common crash types, side swipes, angle crashes, left and right turns from active travel lanes. The street space can be repurposed for other uses to meet other community goals. And then research shows that road diets with protected bike lanes often show a 50% reduction in crashes for all roadway users. And so oftentimes we see crashes like the diagram here on the bottom right, where someone is stopped in the active travel lane to make a left turn. In a road diet configuration, we're able to put in turn lanes so people are out of active travel lanes in order to make their turn, so the person turning is less stressed and doesn't feel the urge and stress to try and find a gap. And the folks that would be stuck behind them are able to move freely in another lane. We got a lot of questions about how does any Department of Transportation determine if a road diet is feasible or not? So I tried to take a really big report and distill it down into this kind of matrix decision tree. So first we start with collecting data. We look at the average annual daily traffic, or AADT, the peak hour, peak direction volume for each of the intersections. We review those based on federal guidelines, and those were determined based on lots of research from other cities and states that have done similar projects. If they do not fit within the guidelines, we can confirm with traffic modeling, but oftentimes the operations will be not ideal for commuters in the peak periods. If it does work within those federal guidelines, then we go into further analysis to model the entire corridor using traffic modeling software to determine operations if we take out one travel lane for the entirety of that segment. If operations improve, maintain, or show minimal increase, about less than 30 seconds in the peak period, then it's deemed to be feasible, so we can proceed to design typically. If they show moderate to increased delay, more than 30 seconds to over 60 seconds, we test mitigations, and those can be signal timing changes, adjusting turn lanes to suit higher volume turns, and see if conditions improve. And if they did, then we can proceed with design. If they do not, then we bring that back and issue the results and talk about the trade-offs with communities. This is kind of the general process. Then we check against the stated community goals. So can this project help address and reduce operating speeds for vehicles? Can we reduce speeding? Safety at intersections. Can the turn lanes help congestion in peak periods by providing people a space to turn? Can it improve safety for all roadway users? Can the design improve pedestrian crossings where we've got a lot of people crossing or school crossings? Can the street space be repurposed for other neighborhood uses or things that can add value to the community? And future bus service, can the design maybe provide better, safer access to transit operations, bus stops and stations? So getting into the feasibility of the road diet, these are kind of general findings across the whole week in the peak period. We'll get further into each of the peaks, the morning peak and evening peak, but this is a general summary. We'll talk in terms of delay. So what does delay mean in traffic engineering? Well, for us, it means the amount of time, the average amount of time someone is waiting in a line of vehicles to get through an intersection. So you have the delay that you currently experience when you're in that line, and that's the average between the very first person waiting to the very last person waiting. And once the signal turns green, the amount of time that maybe if all of the row of cars can't get through and they're stopped, then there's additional delay for those other folks. So what we tend to see is across the week around Galloway Gallatin, there's a slight increase around what is this? North Michigan Park area. We see a slight increase around Decatur. We see some increase from Webster to about Taylor and then to Randolph in certain times of the week. And then increases about from Otis, Perry Street down to Vista. So specific to each of these peak periods. So in the weekday morning peak, we see about a 30-second, less than 30-second increase around Gallatin, about a 30-second increase at Webster, Michigan, similar, less than 30 seconds increase. Rhode Island Avenue, also about a 30-second increase of delay at the intersection. For the evening peak, we see similar conditions. Michigan having about a 30-second delay additional, and then Rhode Island Avenue, another 30 seconds of delay overall. We went into overall travel times for the weekday. So this is if you take the entire corridor from the very start at Bladensburg all the way to Riggs and vice versa. So in the morning, in the northbound direction, not the peak direction, we see about a minute savings in time. For the southbound morning, we actually see an increase overall for the entire corridor, 7.3 minutes approximately, a projected increase to peak hour morning. In the evening time period, where we've got more people heading northbound, we see about a 4.7 minute total projected increase for the peak direction evening commute. For southbound in the evening, we do still see about a 3-minute difference there. I'm going to take you segment by segment, first starting southbound from Riggs heading south, and then opposite direction. So we're kind of traveling how commuters tend to travel here. So starting at Riggs, going down to Gallatin, Galloway area, we see in the morning about a 2.3-minute difference in travel time. In the evening, we see about a 24-second difference. From Gallatin, Galloway area down to Michigan, in the morning, we'll see about a 24-second difference in the travel time. In the evening, we see a reduction in time, about 30 seconds. From Michigan to Rhode Island, we see in the morning about a 3.5 or so minute increase in travel time. And then in the evening as well, another 2.5-minute increase for that segment to get through. And then finally from Rhode Island to Bladensburg, we see about the same in the morning. This tends to be a bottleneck, as you all probably know. in the existing conditions, so we continue to see it be about the same amount of time to get through. And then for the evening time frame, we only see about an 18-second increase to travel time. Starting at Bladensburg and heading back northbound. So this is evening time frame where commuters are coming back up. So in the morning, if you're heading northbound between Bladensburg and Rhode Island, we see about a 42-second reduction in your travel time. In the evening, we see about a 48-second increase in your travel time. From Rhode Island up to Michigan, in the morning, if you're heading northbound, about a 2.1 minute savings. And then in the evening, heading northbound, about a 3.6 minute increase. From Michigan up to Gallatin, in the morning, we see about an additional 2 minutes to head northbound. And then in the evening, about a 12-second difference there. And then from Gallatin to Riggs in the morning, about a 10-second savings. And then in the evening, about a 9-second increase. So heading into the weekend, because the weekend is much different, much higher volumes. So Galloway, we see about a 30-second, less than 30-second increase here. Michigan, actually, because there's so many people traveling through this area, sees about a 50-second increase in travel in delay for that intersection. 18th and Shepherd area, about a 55-second increase at that intersection. Newton to Monroe, that sees one of the highest, about 65 to 80-second increase. And then, Carlton to Bladensburg down here, we see about a 1.5-minute increase. So going through travel time for Saturdays as well on the weekend, northbound, the entirety, we see about a 2-minute projected increase total. And then southbound, because it's congested, as you all probably know, we see a 42-second projected increase from existing with the road diet. So in the southbound weekend travel peak, we see about a 36-second improvement in travel time from Riggs Road down to Gallatin. From Gallatin down to Michigan, we see about a 1.8-minute improvement in travel time as well. The travel time stays about the same from Michigan down to Rhode Island, but from Rhode Island down to Bladensburg is where we see the most increase, about a 3.1-minute increase in travel time. Heading northbound on the weekend, you'll see again about a 3.4-minute increase when we reduce a lane between Bladensburg and Rhode Island. Between Rhode Island and Michigan, we actually have a travel time savings of 1.9 minutes. And then from Michigan to Gallatin, we see about a less than 30-second increase. And then from Gallatin to Riggs, about a 6-second increase. So one thing we wanted to provide you all is sort of a peek behind the curtain here. So you could see how we see these things. This is what it looks like when we model traffic throughout our project. So on the left side of the screen, all of these videos are embedded in our website. You can go to specific intersection areas and see what we see for the modeling. So on the left side is our existing conditions with the traffic counts that we collected from March. On the right side is what that looks like when we reduce a travel lane. So you can see the little cars here waiting in their line until they get the green, and then how all those volumes move through the intersection. So feel free to explore on those. So some things about traffic modeling, everyone should know. Traffic models are our best ability to test what happens if the current level of vehicular traffic uses the same street in different lane configurations. Typical modeling usually focuses on the first, the 1 to 2 peak hour times in the peak 15 minutes to determine the effects of that different street configuration. And we do that because if it's acceptable in the worst traffic times in those peak periods, then we can assume that it'll work fine other times because traffic tends to be lower. And we saw that through the data collection that we had. Traffic did go down off of the peak periods. We are shifting away from trying to design for that peak 15-minute because as we've seen, we have streets that are very wide for the amount of traffic that is actually using them, and that leads to speeding all other times. So we try and focus on the rest of the day and have better conditions for all roadway users. Models are also not a crystal ball. They cannot predict with 100% accuracy what will occur. People may choose different routes. They may be rerouted with different apps that they use, choose different times of the day or week to make their trips, or they may switch travel modes. To provide some real world examples of where road diets have been implemented, a similar one that we could find in DC is Alabama Avenue. So DC, DDOT did a road diet here that was constructed in 2022 that started at about MLK Ave Southeast and went till about 18th Street. It reduced from 4 to 2 lanes and implemented parking and a striped median for the stretch, as well as bike lanes in certain segments. This area serves as a kind of regional cut through from 295 to Suitland and back for people to get through. So we do see a lot of commuters coming through this area. It has a metro station similar to South Dakota Avenue, and a lot of development was coming with the St. Elizabeth's campus. Many churches on the corridor, lots of residential houses right on the corridor as well. After we did the road diet, we saw crashes decrease about 31% overall. Injury crashes decreased about 50%, nearly 50%. Bike and pedestrian crashes decreased nearly 40%. One that's most applicable, I think, is actually across the river in Alexandria, in the city of Alexandria, and it's Seminary Road. So it was about 1 mile of 4 to 3 road diet. The average annual daily traffic was actually slightly higher than South Dakota, 1,600 to 1,800. South Dakota is about 16,300 to 18,500, I believe. It did not have on-street parking before, a lot of development on one end. It tends to be a bypass for 495 to 395, kind of a regional route that people will take through the city. Similar land uses as well. There's a hospital here, there's a fire station here, schools and libraries, and churches and places of worship all along the corridor, schools within the neighborhood and right on as well. So after that was implemented, people waited about an additional minute than previous conditions in the morning peak hour, peak direction. In the opposite direction, travel times actually reduced by 30 seconds in the peak hour, even with traffic volumes that increased by 15%. And this is post-COVID numbers. We didn't see mass diversion on residential streets. The parkway here, which is a pretty wide bypass to, if you know, City of Alexandria, this is Quaker Lane, and this is Duke Street down here at the bottom. So total crashes decreased by 41%. And we saw 0 fatalities and severe injuries the year after and since. There hasn't been another one since. So what's happening with this road diet information? So we are not pursuing a road diet for the remainder of this project. The information is going to be posted on the website. We'll have a final memo once we get all of the details and detailed modeling worked out with our director, council member. That will be posted on the website. All of this will be put in the DDOT library in case things come up in future years. But for the rest of this project, we want to focus on spot safety treatments. So a reminder of where we are now, we'll have about 600,000 remaining for the project. We do want to focus on spot treatments, but we cannot cover all of the intersections that we're going to talk about today. So we'll need your help to prioritize the ones that we do. So how we are thinking about focusing on these spot treatments, First, looking at our high injury network to try and address fatal and severe crashes. Other areas with high crash rates, school areas, especially around Perry Street. Any unsignalized multi-lane crosswalks for pedestrian concerns. Any additional locations that you all noted with your safety concerns as well. Just as a reminder, these are the locations that you all had noted to us, and in bold are the ones that we also had identified as well. So the toolkit that we're going to be looking at using for the spot safety treatments will be left turn traffic calming. We used to use something like this with the flex post down the center to make sure people can make more right angle turns when they're turning and be able to see pedestrians crossing and other vehicles. That usually reduces crashes. Rapid flashing beacons to help people get across the street safely. Median refuge islands to also get us across the street safely. Curb extensions and bulb outs, potentially on side streets, to shorten crossings and improve visibility. Better pavement markings across those focus areas. Turn lane modifications for some, reduce delays and crash risk, and separate turning vehicles from pedestrians. We are also looking at a number of locations for new traffic signals. Those do require them to pass a series of 9 tests or warrants from federal guidelines. So we're looking at that and working through a couple of high priority locations. We're also looking at pedestrian hybrid beacons if we have high pedestrian volumes, lots of people crossing to school. Also looking at a hawk signal for those locations, or a pedestrian hybrid beacon. That's these, you've probably seen them hopefully around the city. Some people call them a Mickey Mouse, but it has the 2 red at the top and then a yellow at the bottom, or the solid red, and then they switch between different phases. Looking at no turn on red restrictions or left turn restrictions in some areas, and then simplifying intersections with one way or another, either restricting some of the access points or removing an underutilized or skewed approach for other uses by the community, or potentially even one-way operations for some locations. So where we've started to identify and have heard from you all and documented your comments, starting at the north end, Galloway, Gallatin, here signal timing seems to be an issue. Pedestrian crossings to Metro are very high. Lots of buses turning into for the Metro turn demand. Lots of speeding in this segment, and cycling access to the Metro station. So we're looking at signal timing changes, improvements to crossings and crossing times, and then clearing out sight lines where we need to. For Decatur to Sargent, because of the skewed intersections, there's some uncontrolled intersections. There's a lot of concern about visibility and then driver confusion through here. Our potential treatments are to evaluate some of these intersections for signalization, potentially simplifying some of those intersection legs by removing one or more, or making one way, just to improve operations and simplify. Webster, Michigan, and Taylor. This area has a lot of needs between all of them. So looking at the skewed intersections, multi-leg, really complex intersection at 16th, Michigan, and South Dakota. So looking at signalization of any unsignalized intersections, improving those crossings, simplifying the intersection by removing one leg or more. And then finally, around the school area and school zone, school safety being a big concern, the uncontrolled crossings that we have, speeding, left turns, and bus stops in this area, looking at crossing enhancements, daylighting for side streets, those curb extensions, and turn restrictions in the area. Moving south, 20th Otis was a concern for you all as well. Looking at the two-way stop control, it's a neighborhood connector. There's a lot of turn demand, and the crosswalks are not signalized. So we're looking at a signal in this area, also clearing out those areas around the crosswalks, daylighting with curb extensions, potentially one-way conversions, and then crossing enhancements here. Rhode Island, Lawrence, and 24th. This is a high injury intersection, so we'll likely have this be one of our focus areas. Signal changes here, some access management, trying to simplify the intersection and reduce all of the conflict points or potential crash locations, looking at median islands and turn restrictions to try and make that safer. Myrtle, Irving, and 26th. There's some missing crosswalks. There's lots of turn demand in this area, uncontrolled crossings and skewed intersection. So looking at that for signalization as well, crossing enhancements, potentially turn pockets, access management, turn restrictions, daylighting, things like that. And then Vista to Bladensburg, this is the 6-lane portion. There's a lot of crashes. It's a high injury network. It's also the bridge deck portion here. The markings tend to be not as visible as they could be. So helping with that, and then speeding when people are not congested here in the peak periods. So we're looking at potentially a striped median to help with all of the conflicts here, flex posts, crossing islands, potentially a very short segment of road diet to facilitate some turn lanes and additional turn locations here, and then turn restrictions potentially as well. So our next steps, we're on our second round right here. And we're talking about the road diet feasibility findings that we have seen through our data analysis, and starting to talk about the spot improvements that you all have mentioned and that we've seen from our data as well. We expect to come back to you in the fall or winter with more specifics on the spot improvements and some concepts that we can discuss with you all in greater detail, and have some options for each of those focus areas as well. Then we'll publish the road diet feasibility report on the website as well over the fall and winter. Then come back to you next summer with spot improvement designs, kind of finalized designs, what you all told us from these fall winter meetings, and then we can go into construction of some of those spot treatments. In the next round, we'll look for you all to help us. We'll have cost estimates, so we'll look for you all to help us with how we spend the rest of this money. So we do have a feedback form that's available for you all now. It's live, so you can scan this QR code, or we can drop the link in the chat. We also have our website here where more information has been posted. Those traffic modeling videos are posted. If you're not already, you can join our mailing list on the website. There's a link, or there's a link right here that you can click. And then you can join Councilmember Parker's newsletter so you can stay up to date with this project and other things going on in Ward 5. And so that's what we have for our presentation tonight. All right. Why don't we go to Q&A? I will stop sharing. And I may share again if we need to go back to other slides. So.
Yeah, I can read off two questions. The
thank
two
you.
last ones that we received.
Mhm.
One of them was from Henry, and he asked, apologies if this is a redundant question. I joined late, but the road diet was determined to be an appropriate intervention and it's not being pursued because of budget limitations, correct?
Correct. Yes. Yeah, we are not able to pursue and build a road diet with the remaining budget that we have.
Right. And more, the full presentation is going to be on the website again, and then the recording as well, so you can get details on those budget restraints. And then somebody asks, can you clarify what is meant by removing one leg?
Sure, yeah. Let me see if I have an example. So Michigan and 16th and Rhode Island, or and South Dakota is a great example. Let's see if I've got a close-in shot of that I can share. Wait. So let me share here. Okay. Good presentation mode. All right, so here at Michigan, we have a very tiny slip lane here that currently allows people to make a right turn over that, or because there's no median or anything preventing this, people can make a turn south here. And if there's no congestion or queues on Michigan, they can turn in to Michigan and actually make a left. There is something called a Michigan left in engineering, but that is not the way to do it from here. So looking at the access here, whether we should make that right turn only and put a barrier so people can't get into the line of traffic waiting on Michigan Avenue, which can cause problems and block lanes if people are waiting to do that. Similar for 16th coming south, it's an uncontrolled turn here to get into the queue, into the line of cars trying to go southbound for South Dakota Avenue. So that can be a really dangerous movement and also cause some congestion. So looking at ways to improve that and the operations and safety of the intersection, we could look at potentially turning 16th Street one way away from South Dakota so people can go north on it, but you can't come out and make a left turn. I know it's signalized right now, but those signals so close together is part of the reason we're having a lot of issues, both safety and operational issues at Michigan Avenue. Similar to that down at, let's see, what's another good example? Webster, back up here. Webster, 12th, Decatur, 12th. Similar conditions here because South Dakota comes in at an angle and the rest of the neighborhood is mostly gridded. It produces these very short blocks that can provide more conflict points, more potential for crashes that need to be addressed in some way. And one of the ways is to potentially remove it or make it into a one-way. And when it's removed, it can be used for other neighborhood purposes, if art, different things like that, planting.
Thank you, Christine. Another comment that I'll just read out loud. Hi, great work. Disappointed that we didn't address northbound South Dakota Ave to Riggs to access North Cap with the multiple signals in elementaries. Can you tell us what happens with that segment?
And this was for what segment? Sorry.
The northbound South Dakota from Riggs to access North Cap. So,
Yep, this one is a very complex intersection, and I don't need to tell you all that, but in looking at it from an engineering standpoint, there's a lot of complex movements happening. So if we're gonna touch the Riggs and South Dakota intersection, that needs to be its own study and evaluation, and so much is going on here, both the development and things happening, but also the amount of traffic coming through. That sort of needs its own standalone study to really be able to solve a lot of the issues that you all are experiencing there. We can look at some short-term things, but there's not a whole lot that we can do outside of what we've already done in the short term. This needs a more robust study.
right. Another question is the road diet off the table forever? Does the project feasibility need to be completely restarted if future budget would allow?
I think that's a question for when a new project or when something else would trigger us to study this again. So that's undetermined at this point. Depending on how far down the road that is, there may need to be a new collection of data, revised traffic analysis and things like that, but that would be determined at the future point.
those are all the questions that we received in the chat. If there are any participants that would like to ask a question verbally, you could do so by raising your hand again, or you could, if you're on the phone, you can dial *3 and ask your question.
Oh, I see Commissioner Kapoor has his hand up. Can we enable him to unmute?
Yep, I will unmute him. Commissioner Kapoor, you have the table. Let me unmute you again. Can you hear us?
Yes, I hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, great. Sorry about that. I just wanted to say thank you all for the immense amount of work that you all have done. I am as disappointed as anybody to know that the budgetary hurdles to moving forward with the road diet at this time are insurmountable. I take the point. It looks like we're looking at $6 or $7 million were we to try to proceed at this moment based on the cost estimates you all have in front of you. So, but I am really excited about the toolkit that you all have for spot treatments, and I look forward to seeing this project move forward that way. Now, I do hope we can bank some of the road diet feasibility study for future work, but I also understand that nobody can foresee how that goes. So, just wanted to thank you all and mention my excitement about moving forward where we are.
Thank you. Yeah, one of the goals is to maybe address some of those issues, install really necessary signals now to maybe bring down that cost for future us's whenever things may come up again. For questions?
Christine, would you mind sharing the slide with the QR codes while we
sure.
wait for any last minute questions? Just, send in a friendly reminder. We want to hear your feedback. We got a lot of feedback from you on the first community engagement, and we loved it. I think it's one of the most interactive projects that we've worked on. So please share your please complete the survey. Where in the survey, if we missed any top locations, you're able to add that location on the survey. You can also help us prioritize locations. So get with your family, get with your neighbors. It could be kind of like a dinner kind of activity where you're talking to your family about which intersection they'd like us to prioritize. Of course, we'll try to get to as many as we can, and we wish we could get to every single one, but again, budget constraints, we'd have to prioritize a few locations. And then visit our website. I worked very hard. Every document, the slides, this recording, and the updates to the project will be posted there. Join our mailing list. Join Councilmember Parker's newsletter as well. Tell your friends that live in the neighborhood, that visit South Dakota Ave, to also come to our in-person meeting this Saturday. We'd love to not only engage with you virtually, but also in person. I do have someone that has raised their hand. It's a caller, so I'll go ahead and unmute them now.
Good evening, everyone. I was wondering, I kind of a little late, but did they focus or talk about the crosswalk right there by the McKendree Church, going across South Dakota Avenue? No one stops there, and they're telling you to stop and let pedestrians go through, but no one stops there. You take your life in your own hand trying to cross that street to get to Rhode Island Avenue. And also, there is no bike lanes going up in South Dakota Avenue. I want to know those two things.
Yep. So one of, to your first question, one of our focus areas is right around Rhode Island Avenue. Let me get to the next one here. Yep, around Rhode Island Avenue. So we'll look at that that whole block from about Lawrence down to past Rhode Island Avenue intersection for all of what you're talking about here. And then for the second part, so we are not doing pursuing a road diet for this project. And the options that were presented at the very first meeting are not going to be pursued at this point. So so we are just going to focus on spot treatments.
Great. So I was just wondering, was that, you know, because I talked to Councilman Zachary Parker when they did the walkthrough, and he said he'd definitely look into that because they actually painted those lines. But it's like you have to wait till that light stops at Rhode Island Avenue so you can go across the street, and nobody stops, and then they block the pathway. And then some people say sorry, some people look straight because they don't want to look at you knowing they're wrong. That's great that you'll look into that because it's really dangerous trying to get the kids across there, going to Rita's or just going to, you know, any store on Rhode Island Avenue, even going to that bus stop right there.
So we are going to focus more on the South Dakota side of that, but we'll include just the parts of Rhode Island that will be needed to make any other improvements to that intersection.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you. Back to the QR codes if people need those. All right, I see Keith Sellers has raised his hand.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
You said you were going to focus on the northern part up to Galloway and Gallatin. Is that correct?
That's correct. So that is about as far as we're going with our focus intersections. Galloway being the one that was the most commented from our interactive map.
I have a strong concern of just a couple of blocks north of there of Riggs and South Dakota Avenue as a major artery, cross town, and a lot of traffic is congested at that intersection and feeds into South Dakota going south. And if there's any consideration that you all could expand and look at that intersection. And then my second point or request is with the modeling, are you factoring in the growth of along the corridor with development projects such as Boys Town, Providence, Redevelopment Hospital, Fort Totten with Arts Place, and eventually Fort Totten Metro with the parking lots being redeveloped there. In addition to that, we have 2 charter schools in our neighborhood that produce a lot of vehicular traffic of parents dropping off their kids. And I'm just concerned that I just want to make sure that when you're modeling increase in traffic, looking to the future in the next 5 to 7 years, what's that going to mean for South Dakota Avenue?
Yep. So for this, we just modeled it as it was. We collected our data in March and to see if the development that's already happened, what that would look like if we took away a travel lane. So we did not apply any growth factor or anything for future modeling. That is something that will need to be done if a full-time road diet is pursued, but we're not doing that at this point. back to the QR codes. Okay, any other questions?
No, no other questions in the Q&A. Please feel free to drop them if you have them, or if you want to raise any questions verbally, please raise your hand.
Okay. I think we can give it maybe like 5 or so more minutes, and then let you all enjoy the rest of your evening, just to see if any more folks have any questions. Like Cyrus said, we have another public meeting coming up. If you want to see all of this and us live in person, you can meet us at the Perry Street School on Saturday, and we'll be there from 10 to noon, giving the same presentation with some interactive activities, so you all can kind of complete that feedback form in person.
Okay, it looks like we have a question. So I'm going to go ahead and unmute.
Okay.
Stephen, you have the floor.
So my observation is that this is a very limited view of South Dakota Avenue from point to point. And I don't see the acknowledgement that this is part of a larger traffic corridor or artery that goes all the way from northwest along Military Road down to Riggs Road and out, and then down South Dakota Avenue, carrying traffic towards Annapolis, Route 50, even the Baltimore Washington Parkway. This is part of a larger system, a larger picture of traffic. And I just want to make sure that DDOT considers that when they think about slowing down traffic and impeding traffic flow on that larger artery, that this is not a local limited, South Dakota Avenue residential street desire issue. This is a cross town traffic artery that we need to support and make it more efficient, not less.
Well, do you have a question for us? Or just comment?
I think just a comment, but we acknowledge it, that it is like many of our streets, a connected street to many areas and points. And we do keep that in the forefront of our heads. But I think I could affirm that in the community, that also safety is our top priority here at DDOT, especially reading the over 2,000 comments that we received from the community. People saying they live here, they have to cross the street here on South Dakota to go to school, to go to the park, to go somewhere. So we do acknowledge the connection that this corridor has with multiple areas, but we also acknowledge that we have multiple residents here that I would like to see safer crossings and intersections. So thank you for that. We do have a couple of other questions. Actually, it's a comment. Henry said, this is absolutely a local issue. We need to make the South Dakota Ave corridor safer for all users and especially the people who live along it. We agree. I'll check to see if there's any raised hands. No raised hands. And we don't have no additional comments.
Well, I think we can wrap it up then. Thank you all for attending. If you'd like to come and see us in person, like I said, we'll be at the Perry Street School on Saturday from 10 to noon. So please come by. Otherwise, we'll let you enjoy the rest of your night. And thank you so much for attending.